Hey guys, welcome back. 8 by Brian here, and I'm back once again for Flea Market and Thrift Store pickups for July. So first, let's kick things off with toys. So first off, I found this pretty cool Rainbow Bright lunchbox, missing the thermos. Picked this up for $5 at a local flea market, and pretty cool. You don't really see this too much, and when I was a little kid, I admit I watched Rainbow Bright, so laugh if you want, but I think it was a cool show and pretty neat little find for only $5. Pretty fun. Also picked up this Coleco Gottlieb, which I'm planning a review coming up soon. It's Pac-Man in a top hat. Yeah, that's rather confusing, I think, but he looks pretty dapper there. But this was a toy line that was licensed by Coleco, and it's a bunch of PVC figures to see how you can move very flexibly, made by a company called Gottlieb. And they're really cool and collectible, and I do not understand, but for the life of me, why he's wearing a top hat and a bow tie and a cane, so I guess he's getting ready to get married, but this is probably when Miss Pac-Man got released, I would have to guess, but who knows. So, pretty cool. I think he was like $3. And then I also picked up some cool Hot Wheels cars. This is neat. You're not going to be able to see it, unfortunately, because the paint is really worn off. But this is a Hot Wheels from their line called Science Friction, which I never heard of before. But they made a lot of really neat alien and futuristic themed Hot Wheels cars. And this says Space Cop on the front of it. And it would have two lasers on the front, which I didn't know about before, which broke off. It has a little radar dish on the back with the engine and the chrome windshield, and it just looks really, really cool. So this kind of reminds me of something like you see RoboCop driving in, or Judge Dredd, and just pretty cool, pretty awesome. So that's from like '78 or so, I think. It's a kind of an older line of die-cast cars. And to add to my Marvel cars, I didn't have when I did the review, but I picked this up for $1. This was the Marvel Superheroes line. And this is the Incredible Hulk van with spoiler I found for $1. And again, a little scuffed and, a little chipped up, but, I mean, really awesome. It's the Incredible Hulk, and I'm really glad that I picked that up. And then for $1, I found this really awesome, really been into Commodore 64 lately. And this is a QBasic programming guide for the Commodore 64, or otherwise known as the VIC-20, which would have been the earlier version of the Commodore 64, and it has all different types of games where you can program lines of code for space shooters or puzzle games and stuff like that, and just really neat. I mean, this is one of those things of video game history where, just kind of gets lost to time. It's not something you really need to have or is really valuable to collect, but it's cool that that was a part of video game history. Got one thing I'm saving for last that I think is really neat that I found. But anyway, this I found, and this is really special to me because I always wonder when I find stuff around my neighborhood and where I grew up at flea markets, the house that I grew up in got sold. So it's always interesting to think, is that my thing from my house? Because a lot of it ends up at Goodwills, and flea market vendors pick it up, and it gets spread throughout the markets. And there's a couple things that I know that have come from my house that's weird, that have come full circle, and I've rebought again. This, I don't know if it's one of those, but I did have this exact same thing when I was a kid. And this is the electronic paperboy handheld game made by Tiger. And a lot of people really badmouth these little LCD games, saying how terrible they are, and the graphics and stuff are bad. But seeing as I only had an Atari 800 XL as my first system and didn't have an NES, before I got my Game Boy, which then transitioned into me getting a Super Nintendo, because by that point, when I got my Game Boy, the NES was kind of reaching the end of its life cycle in 1990, 91, so my parents were just like, oh, let's just get him a Super Nintendo, it doesn't make sense to get him the older system now. And I had a Commodore and an Apple II growing up, so I was still able to play some good games on PC, but it just wasn't the same. Very slow and awkward to play on. So I had a lot of these handheld ones. That's the point that I'm getting at. I had one for Mega Man 3, and this one for Paperboy, and one for Gauntlet, And they're really fun. Like, you know, if your parents or whatever couldn't afford a Game Boy or something like this was how you got introduced to, you know, Nintendo or Sega Genesis games, aside from going to the arcade. So this, I think I paid $15 for, but you know, it goes for like 30 or so online, and it wasn't so much about how much it's worth. This is just a really cool personal memory for me. So this thing is a very, very close spot to my heart. Just a cool toy to come across again in the wild. I also picked up some more laser discs. I picked up Star Wars Return of the Jedi. And again, you can see here all the great imagery on the inside with scenes and story from the movie. Really nice. And Star Wars A New Hope. And again, just give you a look at the inside of the pictures. And these were both $5 each, so really, really cheap. Still working on getting my Laserdisc player actually working, though. I've almost got it working. I just can't get the tray to stay shut, so I think there might be a fuse or something I need to replace, and I will have Laserdisc reviews up and coming, hopefully in the future, one way or another. Another thing that I found, too, that was too damn heavy for me to bring in here and show, I picked up a Betamax player. So Beta reviews are coming, whether you want them or not. So I got that for $5 as well. The thing weighs like 40 pounds, so sorry, I just didn't feel like doing all the work to do that. And then last but not least, in my line of toys, I found this, and I just found this yesterday, actually. And this is a bumper sticker to a band, to a radio station in Philadelphia. I'm sorry, guys, it's like 97 degrees. I'm really, really hot. And this is an old radio station called Eagle 106. And it's been out of existence for like 20 years. And the fact that I found this really cool little bumper sticker with the eagle just chilling, like Joe Cool, too cool for school, just really awesome. So I don't know if I'm just going to keep it the way it is or might put it on the back of my car. It's a really awesome blast from the past. So that was really cool. Alright guys, well that wraps up toys, so let's move on to video games. One thing that I've gotten into collecting more recently than I had before are PC games. And I found quite a few of them this month, and all of them really, really cheap. I didn't pay more than $1 for any of these. And this is an interesting one here. This is called The Legend of Carandia Book 1. And I believe it's a 4 or 5 part series. And this is made by Virgin Games. And it's kind of like it's an RPG, but I'm trying to figure out how to explain it. It's kind of like if you combined like Ultima and Zelda, or maybe better yet, like, well, I mean, it's not that it would be good, but like the CDI Zelda games, if you combine them together, you would kind of get this. Although this is better than the CDI Zelda, so pretty neat. I like the artwork on the front of it, very like fantasy. And this I found. I can't install this on my computer yet because I don't have a virtual emulation machine for Windows 95 up and running, but I picked up Sim Ant, which this little gem of a game is where you play an ant and you live the day-to-day life of an ant, from building your colonies to avoiding spiders and weevils to avoiding humans and exterminators and things like this. And was an awesome, awesome game that came out on the Super Nintendo and the PC, and just, you know, it really went under the radar. I mean, I don't think the concept caught on with a lot of people very well, that you could be an ant, but it's a great, great game. If you ever see this for PC or Super Nintendo, I highly, highly, highly recommend this, and totally recommend that you should pick it up. Fantastic game. And another game that I also picked up is Zork Nemesis. The Zork series is kind of like a spin-off of Riven and Myst, so I don't really remember these too well, but I remember the name. And it's a 4-disc set, so I picked that up for a buck, so pretty cool. And now let's see, let's move on to what we got here. For Nintendo 64, I picked up Wheel of Fortune, so ooh, yeah, that's real exciting, I know, but moderately uncommon. It's more of just a collection filler, I didn't really need it. And then I picked up a great N64 classic that everybody, if you own an N64, needs to be in your collection. Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey. Because I had 3D Hockey 98, but I didn't have the original. And 3D Hockey 98 is just not the same as the original 3D Hockey. This one's a little bit better in my opinion. So again, I think like $1.50 for each of them. Another great game that I picked up for pretty cheap, which has surprisingly gone up in price, is Pilot Wings for the Super Nintendo. I paid, I think, like $5 for this. Maybe, yeah, $5 or $4, which is really, really cheap nowadays. Because Pilot Wings is trending right around $9 to $10. Because everybody remembers it being one of the launch titles for the Super Nintendo, and it's pretty popular. And still a fun game. Still very, very frustrating. Big Al is a big asshole who was like the last flight instructor you have to pass, and I just friggin' hate him. I mean, that stage is so fucking hard. But a great game, great game. Very glad to have picked that up. And another very fun game that I picked up, Joe and Mac, which this originally came out on the NES, but I think is more popularized and well known on the Super Nintendo, and I got this for about $10. Very fun game, just very, very bad control play mechanics. I think if they'd have taken some time to tweak out the controls a little bit more, probably would have been a better game. Aside from that, I also picked up a bunch of Atari stuff, so let's go into that now. And I have so much Atari stuff, it is absolutely ridiculous. I have Atari stuff just coming out the wazoo here. So let's see here, I probably have like 20 Atari games, so I'll go through them rather quickly. A game that I found that's unbelievably rare for the 2600 is based off of a late 1960s, early 1970s sci-fi horror movie, The Earth Dies Screaming. And I picked this up, I think, for like $8 at a local game shop. And I'm telling you guys now, if you're not into Atari collecting or early PC collecting, start now. Because the market is very, very low for these, and once you see everything else that's going to gain in popularity and go up in price, you're going to really run out of stuff to find at flea markets to buy cheaply. And that's when the Atari market's going to blow up. Within the next 2 years, I guarantee you're going to see Atari prices go through the stratosphere. Because, you know, with everybody jumping on the bandwagon now, and the bubble is just about ready to burst for NES and Super Nintendo, you know, and unfortunately not a lot of people really care about the Genesis market. The Turbo 16 market's stabilized. That's always going to be high. But you're going to have Ataris. It's going to be the last thing out there that people are going to want to collect because nobody really gives a shit about the Atari aside for a few select collectors. And you have a lot of really valuable stuff, you know, at least according to Game Value Now, PriceCharting.com, and Atari Age, you know, stuff that's rare that's only going to increase in value because there's not going to be any more copies out there. And this is one of them. So I recommend check out your game stores every now and then because they don't go back and retroactively price their Atari stuff. Because everybody's just like, oh, it's Atari, who cares? Well, who cares? This is a $50 game, that's who cares. And I got this for $8. So, you know, if you have a day off or whatever, I totally recommend picking through your game store's Atari library. You're bound to find some gems in there. Another really good game that's pretty valuable, pretty uncommon. Almost all these are pretty uncommon. Tunnel Runner, which is kind of like a Shadowgate clone or early Wolfenstein clone, where you have like the simulated 3D walls and like monsters pop up and stuff. So very, very fun. I think I paid like $4 or $5 for that. That's probably a $10 to $20 game. Another really fun game that I picked up for just $1 is Sky Skipper, where you pilot a little biplane and you have to rescue animals from these little cages and cells and stuff. And this is about a $10 game, so, you know, great pickup. Not necessarily that valuable, but also pretty uncommon. Gopher, I picked up, which is a fun game, where you're a gopher trying to steal vegetables from a farmer. And I think, again, I paid like $1 or $2 for this. Again, $9 to $10 game. This I just got recently, Super Cobra, which has actually become a lot more uncommon recently. It was a great arcade classic, and I paid $3 for that. And this is, again, you know, $10 to $12. You know, so that's why Atari's great to collect for, too. A lot of classics, and they're really, really cheap. Like, you don't have to pay an arm and a leg for them if you go to the right places. Um, this is an extremely rare game that I found here. This is called Piece of Cake from U.S. Games from the for the 2600, and I paid $2.50 for this at my local game store, where well, I don't go to it all the time, but a local game store near me, and they didn't want to take my trade as something that I was trading in, and gave me an insulting offer, like a quarter on something. So they have their Atari games 2 for $5. Yeah, well, guess what? This is in it, and this is another $50 to $100 game in your 2 for $5 section. So, you know, who got the last laugh there? A $2.50 game that's rated, you know, a 5 rarity on Atari Age that goes from anywhere between $30 to $60. I think I'm having the last laugh there. So, yeah, I'll take that dollar offer, all things video games. And I have another fun game that isn't rare or expensive at all, but I picked up. This is Venture for the 2600, one of the first almost kind of RPGs, like Zelda, dungeon crawlers, you can say. So a good game, solid port. And then I also have Solar Fox that I picked up, which is a good space shooter. And this is also just $1, and I think that's like $11, something like that. Midnight Magic. I cannot speak highly enough of this game for the 2600 because video pinball is not really that good. It doesn't play like a real pinball machine, but I picked this up for $4. It's probably between 6 to 10, you know. So it's not really that valuable, but an awesome, awesome pinball simulator. If you have a 2600, this is a must-own for your system. The graphics are so far advanced for a 2600 for its time. The physics actually play like a real pinball machine. An awesome, awesome, awesome game. I totally recommend picking it up. Another fun and rare game that I picked up called Lost Luggage, where you're at an airport trying to catch luggage that comes off with a little conveyor belt, and if not, all the clothes and stuff spill out. You have to try to grab. So this was more of just another nice little rare collectible that I found, and I paid $6 for that. And you know, again, it's like a $12 to $15 game. And a lot of games like that, I don't mind paying an extra $1 or $2 just because of the rarity. So some games I will pay a little bit more for, but generally I don't pay more than $2 for an Atari game. Another uncommon game that I found, paid $1 for, is Space Shuttle. And this is a fun game where it's exactly what it says. You're not really blasting aliens or anything. You're just simulating flying a space shuttle. So, pretty cool. Picked up Reactor, which I'm not sure what it's about. I've never played this game before, but for $1, looks pretty cool, looks fun. Bowling, which is actually a really good game for the 2600. I mean, you kind of would just pass this by, but it plays really well on the Atari. So, $1, why not? Moonsweeper, which I think that's where like you have a little car you can kind of jump, or I might be confusing that with Moon Patrol, I'm not sure. But anyway, looks like fun. $1, can't pass it up. Anytime you see an Atari game for $1, I always recommend picking it up. You really can't go wrong. This is an interesting, uncommon game called Mega Force, where you're shooting down aliens and stuff over like the Taj Mahal in India and stuff, like protecting their capital building. Or I think it might be the Kremlin, actually, now that I think of it. It kind of looks the same. But fun game, good pickup. Another game that comes highly, highly recommended. This is called Dodge 'em, and I recommend this based off of Classic Game Room's recommendation. This is a really, really fun game where you drive around in a maze and have to go in the opposite direction and switch lanes, collecting little dots while avoiding another car that drives right into, you know, oncoming traffic of your path. So it gets very frantic very quickly, but it's a fun game, and you know, I totally recommend having that in your library. Another Atari classic, Night Driver. Kind of a weird game because you can't see that well and you use the paddle controllers. But another Atari 2600 staple. And this one, the name is always funny. This kind of reminds me of the, I can't remember the developer, but there's a bunch of Kirby games made for the 2600. This is called Sneak and Peek, and it's nothing like what you'd think. It's just hide and go seek for the 2600. It's only worth maybe like $5, so I picked it up for $1 just to add it to my collection. This is another one that's pretty uncommon, by CBS Electronics, and this is Mountain King, which is just basically a Donkey Kong ripoff clone, but pretty fun. So I recommend if you see that, check it out. And one of my favorite ones that I picked up this month, I paid $6 for, and it's an absolute arcade classic, Popeye for the 2600, a must own for any serious Atari 2600 collector. And moving right along, let's go into other random older system stuff. Excuse me, I kind of got a mess everywhere here. It's a lot of stuff to go through. So I picked up a couple of things here for the Commodore. I don't have a Commodore 64 or a VIC-20 yet, but I've been buying the games because they're cheap. I really want to pick one up soon, so there's just an awesome library for both consoles. So first I got Seawolf, which is a very rare game on the VIC-20, and this is about, I think like a $15 to $20 game. Paid like $1.50, $2 for that. Pirates Cove, fairly uncommon, and this is like $9 to $10, I think. Looks pretty fun. And Pinball is basic ordinary pinball, not uncommon or rare at all, and maybe like $4. And then for the Commodore 64, I picked up a game called, really hard to read here, so the label's almost gone, Bubble Burst, which is a very, very rare game for the 2600 and worth about $20 to $30, you know, even with the label missing. So that's really cool. Can't wait to play that once I finally get a console. Save New York for the Commodore 64. Pretty uncommon, and this is worth, again, I think $8 to $10. And all this stuff I paid like $1 for as well. Kickman for the Commodore 64, which is like a minor 2049 or Donkey Kong clone. It was a staple. If you own a Commodore 64, you own Kickman and probably played the hell out of it. And then this anonymous red cartridge for the Commodore 64, which was a little bit of the label missing, so I won't know what this game is till I play it, but I think it's one of the Fisher-Price titles that came out for it. And if that is, if I'm right, that's like a $30 to $40 game. So that'd be cool. Got my fingers crossed. Who knows? I'll let you know once I finally get a system and get to play it. Also picked up some older PC games. I picked up by Sierra. This is Goblins 2. This is on a 1.44 megabyte floppy disk, so I have a nice USB floppy reader hooked up to my computer to be able to play these once I install my virtual Windows 95, like Windows 98 operating shell to be able to run these. So I love these little disc games. They're really fun. They're just cool to collect and fun. And then Pinball Enigma. I don't remember what company this is made by. I can't really read it here. It says B&N Games, I think. Just a really cool little pinball simulator. So both of those were $1. And let's see. Let's go through my other random games before we go into NES. Got a lot of NES to cover. For $20, I found a Game Boy Advance SP charcoal, and this little baby online is going for around $50, so that was a great deal. And it also came with a copy of DK King of Swing, which I don't know where I put that right now. So I mean, you know, that's like $60 of stuff for like $20. Like, are you kidding me? That's a great deal, and it's a nice upgrade from my very beat up Chrome GBA SP. So I desperately needed to upgrade that as well. Also picked up for the Game Boy Advance Jet Grind Radio. Got this for $4, and that's a $25 game. And not so much the fact that I'm happy it's worth a lot. It's just an awesome game. It's a really great port of Jet Grind Radio. I love it on the Dreamcast. I love the port that they came out for the original Xbox and on the Xbox Live Marketplace. It's a great freaking game. And got some regular Game Boy stuff here. I got a cool spot for the regular Game Boy, which plays almost identical to the Super Nintendo version, so recommend grabbing that if you see it. Paid $1 for that. This very weird and mildly uncommon puzzle game called Tesserae. which is, I can't even explain it. There's these different shapes, and you have circles, squares, triangles. I guess I can't explain it after all. That you have to clear from one end to the other, and you have to clear them in a strategic way. So just like those puzzles where you have one peg left over, you don't want to isolate any of the blocks, or else you won't be able to clear out the diagram. So it's almost like Sudoku, if Sudoku were blocks and shapes. And then I found this really interesting import Game Boy game, which I had the name of written down, but I don't remember. As you can see, it has like a little anime guy there. I think this is actually of a Japanese anime show. I don't remember off the top of my head. But needless to say, this is a ridiculously rare game. I don't remember if it's worth anything, but finding a Game Boy import like that, that's awesome. And that was like, I think $1 or $2. And then for the Sega Genesis, I picked up for $1. I picked up Storm Lord, which is a really cool like hack and slash game. And this is I think like $15, $11. So great find, pretty uncommon. And for the Sega Dreamcast, I picked up this sweet little gem. This is Gunbird 2, and I got this for $5 from another flea market seller that always tries to rip me off because he never has his stuff priced. So he's always like, hang on, come back in 10 minutes and I'll let you know what the price of this is. And I'm like, I want to know now. You should have your stuff priced. I shouldn't have to wait for you to price it to see if, you hit a gold mine that you forgot to price your stuff because you're lazy. And guess what? This is worth a ton. Complete like this, and the disc is in mint shape. This is a $70 game. So, jackpot. It's basically a really cool fighting game because it was made by Capcom, so kind of like Marvel vs. SNK in that vein of games. And, uncommon because, unfortunately, the Dreamcast had a short lifespan, so a lot of the games for that became uncommon and rare, and therefore it became pricey, just like stuff on the Saturn. Alright, so now let's go through NES. Don't have too much to go through here. Picked up the Three Stooges, fun game I remember playing as a kid for like $3. Was happy to add that to my collection. Picked up Donkey Kong 3 for $5, which is like a $15 to $20 game. This game is amazing. I know this game gets a lot of crap, but really, really fun. Definitely recommend picking that up. Picked up Bart versus the World for like $4 or $5. Terrible game. I do not recommend this at all. It's just a bunch of little mini games, and it was just a cheap cash in on The Simpsons. Stick with Bart meets Radioactive Man if you can afford it, or even Bart versus the Space Mutants. Even though that game isn't that good, it's way better than this piece of shit. This is an absolute abomination of a game that if I had known, I wouldn't have even bought it. It's a collection filler, but it's terrible. And this I picked up. I don't recall if I've included this in my last flea market video, so if I did, I'm sorry. If not, this is Solitaire for the NES, an AVE title, and this is extraordinarily rare. I paid $20 for this, I think, and it's worth, a little bit more than that, like 30 or so, but it wasn't so much of the value, just as this is a rare title to get a hold of, so very cool. And this is better than Bart versus the World, so Solitaire game being better than that, yeah, don't pick up friggin' Bart vs. the World. Very bad game. And this is another AVE game that I picked up, and I love that it has the sleeve with the seal of quality, which obviously AVE games did not have very much quality. But this is called, can't see here, Rad Racket Deluxe Tennis 2. This is another extremely rare game that goes for around between $60 to $80 online. And it's actually not a bad tennis game. I saw a lot of people giving this a lot of crap, but once you get the mechanics down, it's kind of boring, but it's certainly not bad. I've played much worse games than this. And this I paid, let's see, a guy wanted $50, and I think I paid like $35. And again, this is like another $75 to $80 game. Extremely rare title to find. Another uncommon game that I found, this is by Comerica, and this is MiG-29 Soviet Fighter, and it's basically exactly what it sounds. Pilot a Soviet jet plane, and looks pretty fun. And you know, it has a little switch on the back to override the lockout ship. And I just love weird, uncommon games like this. That's why I picked that up. And speaking of weird and uncommon, I love the label on this because it's so ridiculous. I picked up Rollerblade Racer, which is an official Rollerblade Incorporated company logo branded NES game, which is horrible. But I just love that they're in like all those crazy 90s and 80s track suits and the bright pink. I mean, this is why you collect for Nintendo right here. Stuff like this, because where do you see crazy nonsense like this anywhere else with a bright pink logo and people in aerobic track suits rollerblading? That is why you get into video game collecting, in my opinion. Also picked up The Adventures of Lolo 2. Silkworm, another uncommon game. And Stinger, a very fun shooter for the NES, which is very uncommon. So that takes care of NES. And I have just a few more things here. I also picked up for the Sega Genesis, I picked up the Turbo Touch. I have one of these for the Super Nintendo. And what it is it replaces the actual D-pad here. And it senses where your thumb is by with static electricity, I guess. There's like a little mat under there that very, very accurately detects where your thumb is. And it has nice turbo fire buttons and stuff. And you don't even press down hard at all. Like, you barely touch it, and it is just dead on. And another great thing about this, like with all Genesis port type controllers, you can use this on your Atari. So, you know, you get the advantage of, you know, games like Space Invaders. You got a turbo fire button now. Or you have a much more accurate D-pad, because the regular Genesis ones aren't that accurate. So, this was $3, and very, very uncommon. You don't see this for the Genesis as much. You see the Super Nintendo version a lot, but not so much that for the Genesis. And finally, because I am almost out of breath and we have gone through a ton of stuff here, last but not least, the coup de grace. An original, complete in-box Magnavox Odyssey. And this, I only paid, what did I pay? 30 or 35 bucks for this, and complete in box. This is 100% complete. These go from anywhere between $300 to $400. So I'm going to eventually trade this in. This will make for a nice bit of trade bait where I can get some other good games in my collection. I do want to play this first, but this is the granddaddy of them all. I mean, aside from like the prototype Pong machines, this is the very first video game system for home use. Before the Atari Pong consoles came out, before everything. It has all the overlays, all the poker chips, all the cards, all the metal cartridges. And, you know, this came out in 1972. So that just gives you a little bit of, you know, background on just how old this console is. And this is what first introduced the world, really, to video gaming, to home console gaming. Like before that, none of this had ever existed. Arcades weren't even that popular, or they were barely even a thing yet. So, you know, this, I wouldn't have any of my other games that I collect now if not for this. And just an amazing, amazing find to find this to, you know, triple my investment, you know, by practically 300%, you know, or whatever, a ridiculous percent. That's all that matters. An awesome, awesome find, and very heavy. This is killing my knee as I speak right now. So guys, that's going to do it for flea market pickups and thrift store pickups for July. So I'll see you guys back here again next month for August. Take care and happy hunting.
Hey guys, if you like the video that you just watched, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. And if you do the Facebook and Twitter thing, follow me at #KingOfRetro. See you next time.